Hello everyone and welcome to another bake-along recipe. I'm here to share another delicious holiday treat. This time I'm making not a dessert, but you could definitely enjoy it as dessert. It's my crème brûlée eggnog. Yes, you heard that right. I am not making eggnog crème brûlée. I am making crème brûlée eggnog. So I'm making that classic custardy drink with nutmeg and rum or rum extract, but I'm caramelizing sugar to rim the glasses and garnish this lovely drink. So that's where I'm gonna start, by making the caramelized sugar. And what I'm doing, you just need a small pot for this. This is a small amount of caramelized sugar with just a little water. And I always like to put my water in the pan first. That way it's easier for the sugar to dissolve, and you can see it immediately start dissolving. And then to help keep that sugar liquefied as it cooks, a little bit of acidity with some fresh lemon juice. This could also be a splash of white vinegar if you want, or you can also use a bit of corn syrup if you'd rather. So now I'm gonna take this over to my burner on high heat, and I'll boil the sugar until it turns that nice light amber color. I'm just gonna give it a little shake to make sure it's dissolving. There we go. As I'm cooking the sugar, occasionally I'll brush the sides of the pot with a little bit of water just to make sure I don't get droplets of sugar on the side of the pot, which can potentially crystallize, though adding that bit of lemon juice certainly helps. Before you start cooking your sugar, you want to make sure you have your pan or dish ready. So I'm using a heat-proof pie plate, and I've lightly greased it and lined it with parchment paper. This is all really the caramel, the space that it will take up. So it can be a small baking tray lined with parchment, anything that will just hold the caramel, but in as thin a layer as possible. Let me take a peek. I'm just starting to get a simmer. I came up with this idea for crème brûlée eggnog when I was eating, actually, I was eating an eggnog flavored crème brûlée. And sometimes you don't want the dessert. And this is a nice way to sort of dress up an eggnog. Even if you're making a drink like this and you don't wish to make the homemade eggnog, if you have a really good eggnog that you like to use, just do the caramelized sugar effect to make it a little more special. All right, I've got a nice full boil, and I've got my brush and a little bit of water. So I'll just brush the sides. And because I'm not candy making a confection, the temperature of the sugar, you don't need to use a thermometer to measure it. You use the color to tell you. If you were making something like homemade candy canes, you would want to cook your sugar to 300 to 305 Fahrenheit, which is known as hard crack. So that is sugar that sets up firmly, but it doesn't have any color. Once you get above 310, well, then your sugar starts taking on color, and you know it's going to set up. I can see I'm getting closer because the bubbles on the surface of the sugar, they start slowing down and they start getting bigger because the sugar is thickening up a little bit. And the water at this point has evaporated. And you'll notice I'm not stirring the pot. You don't want to stir your caramelizing sugar. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm seeing a hint of color start. It depends on your burner. Sometimes stove burners have a hot spot, and you may find if you're getting dark, it's starting to turn amber in one spot, but not the rest. Just give the pan a gentle swirl to work that color in. There we go. So now it's very pale amber, so I want to Let it go. Another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I do pull it off the heat before I hit my ideal temperature because this sugar is going to continue to cook for just another few seconds. There, I have that gorgeous color. Just going to put my milk on the heat, but I'll talk about that in a second. Give this a little swirl. It's going to start setting up. It just makes the caramelized sugar easier to break into pieces. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you bite into a nice piece of caramel this thick. That would just be too much. All right, and now you set this aside to cool, and it can take up to 30 minutes. It is, remember, very, very hot. So I'll set that aside, and then I'll just show you, because I have one already made and set, ready to use. So before I get into using the caramelized sugar, let's actually make the eggnog itself. I've got 3 cups of milk heating up, but now I need to add some flavor. And essentially making an eggnog is like making a nice rich crème anglaise, except not quite as thick. It's not a sauce. You want to be able to drink it, so you don't make it as thick as the sauce. Using milk, I'm going to add my flavoring. So the 2 flavorings in eggnog, nutmeg and rum. And so I'm gonna grate a good 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg into my milk. And when nutmeg is the single spice, a little goes a long way. I can actually smell the nutmeg as soon as I grated it into the warm milk. And it smells very festive. I'll return this to the heat. Just give it a little whisk. That way the nutmeg is cooking into the milk itself, infusing the flavor. Just like you add vanilla bean seeds to milk when you're making a crème brûlée, to infuse the flavor into the milk, we're doing the exact same thing with the nutmeg. Now, I've got 6 egg yolks separated, and I've saved one of the whites because I'm gonna use that to rim the glasses. So typically 6 egg yolks is enough for, well, I've made crème anglaise recipes before, but we're dealing with the same elements of crème anglaise. Milk, though typically crème anglaise is made with a 1/2 and 1/2 cream, but I've got milk, egg yolks, and then my sugar. So I'll whisk that together. And then I'm going to temper some of the hot milk into this egg yolk mixture and then cook it out. And so eggnog, I have seen recipes that use uncooked eggs, but I prefer cooking out the eggs to make sure everyone can enjoy them. Got a nice bit of steam and some light bubbles breaking the surface. So now I'm drizzling in some of the milk to warm up the eggs. And then I'll add this back to the pot. Here we go. And then you return this to the heat. And it really takes only about a couple minutes. It depends how hot your milk is in the first place. To thicken it up, let the egg yolks cook. You'll want a minimum of 165 Fahrenheit if you're using a thermometer, but really if you're heating your milk to just below a simmer, so you're really at 200, once you add the eggs and sugar, you know you're going to hit the temperature. Time is key here, so give yourself a couple of minutes to cook out the eggs and let this beautiful custard thicken up. I have a bowl ready with a strainer. Ooh, that's looking nice, and I have to tell you, it smells delicious. Do you have a tradition of making eggnog or eggnog flavored desserts during the holiday season? If you do, let me know. And especially if it's eggnog flavored desserts, what is it that you like to make? I know I have made eggnog creme brulee, eggnog cheesecake, eggnog trifle. You could do a layer cake, an eggnog buttercream is entirely possible. Ooh, I've made eggnog macaron before. They're pretty nifty. I've worked the rum extract and the nutmeg into the buttercream itself. A little sprinkle of nutmeg on top of the shells. All right, oh, I can see it's thickening up nicely. I'm just stirring to keep everything moving. We're not trying to aerate it because I've got another trick to make this a fluffy, airy eggnog. Turn this off the heat. And then pour this through a mesh strainer. There we go. And then you get any coarse bits of nutmeg strained out. And I can see there's always a couple little pieces of egg white that switch in. So you slip in. You want to make sure you strain that out. Now, of course, this is a make ahead. You want to give this a chance to chill completely. So cool it to room temperature, leave it on the counter for about an hour, then pop it in the fridge so you can make this 1 to 2 days ahead of time. And then once it's cold, here it is. So you will see it starts to thicken up once it's cold. Look at that beautiful creme brulee. Creme brulee eggnog. But the creme brulee part is about to happen in just a minute. Now I'll leave it up to you. In terms of rum, rum is the key side flavor in addition to the nutmeg and eggnog. If you want to add spirits to your eggnog, well, you can add a little bit of rum. I think a spiced rum is always nice to add. If you want to keep this family friendly, then you add just a touch, because it's very intense, of rum extract. So that delivers the aroma and the flavor without the spirits. So that is your choice. But now my finishing touch to complete the eggnog itself is to whip. So for 3 cups of milk that I've cooked with the eggs, I whip 1 cup of whipping cream and fold that in. Now, I do say in the recipe, you'll see it below, that it's optional. So this is delicious all on its own, but to aerate it and just add that extra bit of richness, whisking in your whipped cream is just, it's over the top. I remember the first time I made this recipe to serve to friends. I'm gonna grab a whisk for that. My friend Tina came over to have this and she said, I've never had eggnog like this. And I think she was going in for her 3rd glass and I was just almost wanted to tell her, like, it's the whipped cream. I don't think she realized how much whipping cream she was enjoying in her eggnog. There you go. But you can see now, oh, the whipped cream dissolves into the eggnog. So do make sure if you're adding the whipped cream, you add it right before you want to serve the eggnog. It will deflate a little bit. It'll still be rich and tasty, but it will deflate over time. And oh my gosh, isn't that just luscious? Okay, so you can put this in your pitcher. I've got a small one here. Get this ready to portion up because now it's time to take care of the creme brulee. And I'm putting the eggnog into this pitcher so that I can pour a little more tidily than I'm doing right now. I've got drips everywhere. Let me just wipe this. Tidy it up, ready to go. Okay, so this caramelized sugar that has had its chance to set, you want to blitz in a mini chopper, a food processor, blender, whatever you have around. So just shatter it into pieces like this. Oh look, and they go everywhere. Actually, these little pieces are nice to hang on to. If you don't want to use a mini chopper, you can put the sugar into a resealable bag and use the bottom of a pot to crush it. So we want to crush it without turning it into a powder necessarily, but kind of chop it. That way you can bite through it. Woo! Caramelized sugar dust. This is also a nice treat for your morning coffee if you want to add a little something festive. So I'm going to pour some of the caramelized sugar into a glass, rest into my bowl for garnish. And now, to get your glasses ready, I have the reserved egg white from my eggnog custard. And you want to take your glass, so you rim it first before you fill it. Dip the rim in the egg white, and then rim the glass in the caramelized sugar, like so. This you could do ahead of time. The reason you don't use water is if you were to use water, well, it would simply melt the caramelized sugar, and then it would end up dripping down the glass. So the egg white keeps the sugar intact. In fact, it dries on the glass nicely. Look at that, gorgeous, gorgeous. Oh, I went the other way around. Whoops. Here, let's dip it in the egg white and then do the sugar. Oh, that's a nice thick one. Double dipped. Now, let me just bring this closer so I can finish it off. Now we're ready to serve the eggnog. You know, we've had these glasses in our dining room cupboard forever, and I don't know that I have ever used them, but to me, this is a perfect eggnog portion. Because it's rich, it's decadent, this is just the right amount for me. And your finishing touch, if you want, in addition to the rim, sprinkle a little of that ground caramelized sugar on top, just like you do so when you sip the eggnog, it's like a crème brûlée. You get the caramelized sugar, it eventually dissolves into the eggnog. And what a great way to take a holiday classic and really personalize it and make it your own. I really hope you'll give this recipe a try. It's worth it. And in addition to impressing your friends and family, you're going to impress yourself. And that's always my goal when I share my recipes and tips with you. I wish you a delicious holiday season, and I'll see you again for another bake-along recipe. It tastes like crème brûlée. That balance of the caramelized sugar and that custard, feeling festive.